Welcome into Bud Light Hog Talk here at District Bar and Grill. You're watching on 23.2 Antenna TV. It's been a while, about a month since our last show. Good to be back here at District Bar and Grill. Thanks everybody for coming out. Great show lined up for you tonight. First we'll have Blackhawks developmental goalie coach Andrew Allen. Later on we'll have Brandon Svensson and Terry Broadhurst on the show. So first, Allie, we'll start with you. Thanks for your time and welcome aboard again.
Thanks for having me.
You are pinch hitting for Ted Den once again. He's a healthy scratch. Late change here tonight.
Sometimes they bring in the heavy hitters, you know?
You've done it just about as many times as he has now. He's just trying to sneak his way out and get you whenever you're in town, I guess.
I'm not in town all that often, so if I'm here on a Monday night, I like to come out, so it worked out well.
Well, I like to call you the busiest man in the Blackhawks organization because of your crazy travel schedule. So where are you coming from? You just got back in Rockford today, right?
Yeah, I was in Victoriaville, Quebec with one of our draft picks in the Quebec Major Junior Hockey League for the weekend and worked it into a family weekend as well and drove to my home in Ottawa last night with my family and out this morning to Chicago.
At least you got a couple hours at home, hang out with the family a little bit?
Yeah, I saw them quite a bit, but I was only actually at home for probably about 7 hours.
For fans who may not know at home, watching or listening, kind of describe your job, your position with the Blackhawks. Obviously, you don't work with the NHL goaltenders, but a lot of goalies in the Blackhawks system that you do work with on a frequent basis.
Well, how we work it here with the Blackhawks is Stefan Waite's the NHL goalie coach, so he works with the guys in Chicago with Crawford and Emery, and I work with everybody else in our system outside the NHL. So I spend a lot of time here with our goalies in Rockford, and then anybody else who's signed with us, Ken Simpson in the East Coast League, and we have Matt Carruth in Portland, and then our draft picks as well. So, and then I also do some scouting whenever needed as well, and just kind of a jack of all trades.
We've got a graphic we'll put up on the screen here for you of Andrew Allen and his kind of travel schedule. No one really close by. I guess the closest really is Toledo and Rockford. You're working with Carlson now and Hutton in Rockford with Ken Simpson in Toledo, like you said, but you've got Kearney, Nebraska, Portland, Oregon, Sherwood Park, Alberta, that's right outside of Edmonton, and then all the way on the other side of Canada, you're in Quebec at Victoriaville. Yeah. What's your travel schedule like? I mean, how do you do it?
Well, it's interesting because I sit down before, I do it monthly, and then it can always change depending on where goalies are playing well and if anybody's struggling, but I try to sit down before the month, and I sit down with the practice. I try to be at more practices than games because I can make more, be more part of it when it's practice, and I can watch all our games on video and give feedback that way. So I try to sit down with the schedule and see where all the teams. So I have 7 goalies on 6 teams. So that's 6 practice schedules and game schedules, and so it's quite sometimes daunting. I kind of make a trial run, and then I'm like, oh no, I can't do that, and then I go back and I try to figure it all out, and then I usually come up with a plan, and about 5 days later it changes, and then we start all over again. So it's sometimes a little bit difficult, and that's why sometimes I'm only in for a couple days and then gone again, is to try to see all the goalies in practice during the month.
Now, your home is in Ottawa. How often do you get to be at home and be with the family?
During the season, about 10 days a month. So, and it's never 10 days straight. It's usually three at a time, 4 at a time. But we make it work. I have 2 young kids, but we make it work real well. Sometimes they meet me on the road, and they're down here every once in a while as well. And so the way I look at it is I have my summers at home. My kids aren't in school, and I get to see them probably more than a lot of fathers would. It's just not on a consistent basis. It's here and there. So that's the way I justify it anyways. I get to see them quite a bit, but not as much during the season.
How much do you do over the summer? I'm sure you're working with guys in prospect camps, and whether they do travel, whatever it is. How often are you working with the guys after the season's over or before the season starts?
It's a little less, obviously. Once we finish after playoffs here in Chicago's playoffs, usually get a bit of a break. But if we have prospects that are in the playoffs where they are, well, I want to go out and watch. I watched Matt Carruth in the WHL finals last year against Edmonton. So that's in May. So you get a little bit of a break in there, and then you get ready for the draft. So I'm also involved with our amateur scouting staff for goalies on the draft. So there's a couple of there's a Hockey Canada summer goalie, draft eligible goalie camp. There's a USA hockey camp. So that's the beginning of June. Then the draft's in June, and then development camps in July. So usually August is the only month you pretty much have all of it, but it's not near as much. It's quite a bit less.
So you get to help out with a little scouting, kind of look at guys and say, all right, maybe this is a guy who can fit in our system or someone we might like as a draft pick in the future.
Yeah, it's a lot. I'm first and foremost a goalie coach, but it's nice. It's nice to be involved in that, to try to project how good we think goalies or players will be, and it's been very interesting for me to be a part of the meetings with the scouting staff and how they run their meetings and how they look at players and how they project. The most difficult part is, all right, yeah, I like his skill. He looks good right right now. Well, he's 17. What's he going to be when he's 22? Like
Right.
when he's ready to make a difference for the Blackhawks, 20 to 22. With goalies could be 25 to 28. So it's really interesting how they approach that, and I'm learning more as I go.
What kind of attributes do you look for when you're doing the scouting aspect of things? Obviously, these guys are younger. You don't know if they're going to pan out when they're not mature yet physically, let alone mentally. What are you looking for that maybe kind of shows that they will project into a possible NHL goalie?
First and foremost for me is athleticism. I think you can teach a lot of things, but you need a goalie to look like they're an athlete, look like they can move well and react to situations in the games well. So athleticism is big for me. Size always plays a factor. It's not the end of the world if you're not a big goalie, but it's nice to have a big goalie that moves like a small goalie. So you definitely look at size. For me, is body language. And what I mean by body language is, to me, it's the mental side of the game. How do they react in games after they give up a goal, after something bad happens in the game, in a close game late in the game? How do they react? So their stats might not be the best in the world, but how does this goalie react in game situations? So those are the three areas that I really focus on when I look, and then kind of everything kind of branches off from there.
Seems like a trend now in the NHL is going more for the big goalies, whether it's just because they cover more of the net. Sure, that helps, but you look at some of the better goaltenders now in the league. I always like to look at Pekka Rinne.
Yeah.
I think he's listed at 6'5", but he is incredible to watch. Obviously, the Hawks got the better of him last night. Didn't look so good.
Yeah, not as good
that's
last
a different
night.
story, though. But a guy like a Rinne or other big goalies, it seems like now teams want to get those guys when they're young.
That's maybe right now your prototypical ideal goalie is a Pekka Rinne. He's athletic, quick, and he's big. But, there's a lot of goalies with success. Jonathan Quick last year at 6 feet to 6'1" was a Conn Smythe winner. So it's all dependent, I think, more mentally than physically for the goalies, but they definitely have to have speed and they have to have athleticism, and the size varies. It depends on the goalie. And goalies, like a Jonathan Quick, plays a different style than a Pekka Rinne just based on their size. He needs to be a little bit more aggressive to take a little bit more room,
Sure.
where a Pekka Rinne or a Henrik Lundqvist or a Mike Smith can play a little deeper because they're a little bit bigger. And you look at our two goalies here, two very different styles. We have Carter Hutton, a lot like a Jonathan Quick. Very, very athletic, very fast goaltender, recovery-wise, plays the puck great, a little bit less size, so he's a little bit more aggressive, where we have Carlson, who plays a little deeper. You don't see him moving as much. He's bigger. So it's two very different styles of goaltending.
And certainly Henrik Karlsson, a guy I'd like to talk to you about. I don't know how much you've seen him. You obviously get the game footage after the games that they send out to you. 4 games now for the IceHogs. He's got a 2.23 goals against average. Maybe a shaky period here and there, but for the most part, he's looked like a quality goaltender.
Yeah, well, the biggest thing for Henrik coming in was that he hadn't played in 8
Right.
to 10 months. So it was. I was interested to see how he adapted right away. And he's a hard worker, and he's got a good attitude coming in. So that was, to me, was the best situation possible to start with. And his first game out, he didn't get a lot of shots, but he made some quality saves in a 1-0 loss. And then in his second game, he had a tough period, but really bounced back from it and ended up being a big part of the reason why we won. We're going 10 for 11 in a shootout. And now he's getting more minutes. Now he's getting more. He knows the guys better now, and getting into the swing of things. So he's done well for us. And does he wish he'd been a little bit better in some of those periods? Yes, obviously, but it's a work in progress, and I just feel like he's getting more into the flow now the longer he's been here.
Yeah, obviously consistency will come with any ice time. That's the case for any hockey player in general. But through 4 games, what have you seen from him that he's done well or something that he could work on? Obviously, that 5-4 shootout victory, he came up huge after a really poor first period.
Yeah, he's with his size. I think he plays positionally very well. He looks very relaxed in the net. He's not scrambly all that much. He's big. He gets into position. He lets pucks hit him. I think that's a big asset of his. He moves well laterally for a big goalie. He moves well side to side quite well. And his recovery angles, you'll notice he's always going into his posts and getting himself in good position, not over sliding outside the net, which he does very well. Things that I think he can work on is his puck playing ability, and that's something that he'll get more comfortable with our D-core and how we do it here. They're very lucky with Carter Hutton. They have the luxury of having one of the best puck playing goalies in the American League or in pro hockey, arguably, I would say in pro hockey.
He's got about as few assists as some of the forwards on the IceHogs right now.
So Carlson's a different style of goalie, but he just needs to get out of the net and help our D out and from that aspect. And then I think for him, his foot speed for a big goalie, he can always work on his feet and getting his feet set and moving a little more quickly that way. So it'd be fun. It's going to be a lot of fun to continue to work with him.
I'm a pretty big guy, and when I first saw him in person, I was like, man, you make me feel small. We listed him at 6'6" on the website and everything in the AHL website, but he claims he's 6'7", and it shows when he's on the ice. I mean, he's squatted down in front of that. There's not a lot of room to shoot before he even gets set. And the thing I notice is his pads, his legs are so long. When he goes pipe to pipe, it seems like he just lays one leg down and the whole net's covered.
Yeah, it's funny because there's a lot of advantages to being that big, but it creates a few problems. I was 6'4" too, and I don't coach that many goalies that I have to look up to either.
Right.
So it's quite an interesting feeling for me too to be standing like this looking up to him. But he's so long and so big that sometimes it's a little difficult. He gets his pad to the post, but it's harder for him to get his body there because it's longer, So it's being big is great, but then it creates situations that you have to work on. And the length of his body is so big here that pucks find ways through big goalies. So he's got to really work on his hands and getting tight. And so there's always, with any size goalie, there's issues and things that you need to work on.
What about now Carter Hutton? Last year, second half of the season, he was just lights out for the most part, played really well, and really earned the number one position that he got with Rockford. Now, a bit of an up and down season so far for him, but he's had some stretches where he's been the Carter Hutton we saw last year, but there's also been some stretches for him where hasn't looked quite as good. Obviously, some of the defensive issues in front of him haven't helped, and we saw that with Carlson in net the other night, the 2-0 loss. Neither of those goals you can put on any goaltender, no matter how good they are.
Yeah, it's consistency is it's a big word for us as goaltenders. It's the hardest thing, and Carter has been very, very good this year. It hasn't shown as much in his numbers and in some nights in the results, but it's more of a team concept,
Sure.
Consistency as a team, and you can't pinpoint defensemen, forwards, goaltending, but the goaltenders are always in the spotlight. And Carter himself would say he at times wishes he would have been better, but he is the same goalie as he was last year. I think he's a better goalie than he was last year. He has more experience, but on some nights it hasn't looked that way, from the common eye. But he is a battler. He is a very mentally strong goaltender, and I look for big things out of him. Now we have a great tandem here that are going to push each other, and I look for real big things out of both of them here down the stretch.
Obviously, the mental aspect of any sport is so crucial, but especially for goaltenders, if you give up a soft goal or a bad goal, you want to get out of your mind as quickly as possible. Mm-hmm. What do you see mentally from Carter Hutton, from Henrik Karlsson? Obviously, you haven't worked with Karlsson too much yet, but what do you see from them maybe that kind of lets them get that out of their mind and work on focusing on not giving up a goal like that again?
Every goalie has their own plan after a goal. We talk about it, but it's a very personal thing. It's not, I had mine, and everybody, you can't force yours on anybody
Sure.
else. Different people react different ways. But both of them do a good job of talking to themselves after goal, trying to let it go. Does it always happen perfectly? No. That's the nature of hockey. A lot of times you see a goal, and you do see another goal quickly. Either way, the next shift after a goal is huge. But they both do a good job of, we call it self-talk, talking to themselves and trying to let it go. Let it go. We'll deal with it after the game. We'll look at it on video. We can slow it down as slow as we want to. But in the moment, you have to be able to let it go. And they both seem to me have a pretty good mental demeanor on how they go about doing that.
From a scouting perspective, I guess, you look at a goalie, even now guys who are with the Blackhawks organization, you go and see them maybe 2 or 3 games, or you see them a couple days in a row.
Yep.
It's hard to really get that big picture when you're on such a small basis like that, seeing them 2 or 3 games. They might have 2 bad games in a row, but their numbers for the rest of the year could be great.
Yep.
How do you kind of take into account what you see from their mental aspect of it and then apply it to what they've done throughout the course of the season? I mean, it's got to be pretty tough because you don't really get to know these guys that much up here.
Yeah, well, our guys that are our property, I get to know pretty well. Not from seeing them live all that often, but I speak to them. I speak to all my goalies weekly,
Okay.
And then the other side. So you have to form a trusting relationship with them. So I can get to kind of know. I can tell by talking to them on the phone how they're feeling,
Okay.
even if they're trying to fake it. Oh yeah, everything's going well, but you can tell. But also you have to form a good relationship with their coaching staffs. Every team, junior team or NCAA or a pro team, obviously have a goalie coach. The same, not all of them are there every day. Some of them are volunteers, but you got to make a good relationship with the coaching staff to kind of hear what's going from their aspect, and then from the goalie's aspect, then you get to see it yourself on video and when you're there live. So our guys, it's not as hard. I can keep up to date and kind of know where they are mentally and know what they need to work on. But when you're just going to scout a guy out of the blue and you see something in a game, maybe he plays great, you're looking at his stats and he's had 2 wins all year, you got to piece together, well, what is it? Is it him? Is it a team? The team isn't very good, and you need to see them more than once. You can't make an opinion on one night on a goal. I feel at least 5 times is nice. If you can see 5 times, then I feel you can get a kind of a feel for what he's like, what kind of team he plays behind, both in his physical and mental abilities.
A couple guys that IceHogs fans may be a little familiar with. First, Kent Simpson down in Toledo. Has a bit of an up and down season, but recently it seems like he's kind of turned it on. Last year he was ECHL Goaltender of the Week. So what have you seen from him in your stints down in Toledo?
Well, Kent's a first-year pro, a 20-year-old, learning as he goes. And early in the year, because we split the affiliation with Toledo with Detroit,
right.
Early in the year he was playing one game, back up one game. They were just splitting back and forth. And then recently, which is tough for a goalie, you find it hard. Even if you win, you're not playing the next night. So recently, Detroit's had some injuries in nets, so he's been able to play every game. And he's played 8 or 9 in a row now, and I think he's 8. Is it 10? He might be 8-2 in his last 10.
Either way, good numbers.
Yeah, very, very good. So he has been able to get in a bit of a rhythm now, and I really like what I see for him. He played one game for us up here. The result didn't end up well, but he came in that day, played for us without a practice, and made a lot of big saves. So I see a bright future for him. He just needs experience and needs to keep progressing.
Matt Caruth, the guy who's now with the Portland Winterhawks, he was here for training camp. But similar size, I think, as Carter Hutton. What have you seen out of him so far up in Portland? That's obviously a phenomenal team. I think they're the tops in WHL right now, and he is on pace to set all kinds of records in that league. He's
been in Portland now. This is his 4th year, and he's a very intense goaltender. He's got a lot of wins under his belt, but you watch Portland play, and they're very run and gun. He makes a lot of quality saves, and he plays the puck well like Carter does. Maybe not quite yet as well as Carter, but he plays the puck well, and he's a very boxy goalie. Gets in position, takes up space, and he battles. He's really, really intense. He's vocal. You can hear him in Portland. They play where the NBA team, the Trailblazers, play, and so sometimes I sit way up high, and you can hear him from up there. He's really, really vocal goaltender, and I think he's got him and Kent Simpson are the same year. He went back to junior, and Kent stayed pro, but it was more of a situation because of the lockout. We didn't have positions, and Portland was a good team, so we put him back in a really good situation. They have a chance to win the Memorial Cup this year, and it'll be a great experience for him, but he's got a bright future as well if he keeps progressing the way he has.
And quickly before we go, on Sunday night, Corey Crawford gets a shutout there for the Blackhawks. First one since March 2011, I think, for Chicago. It was a long time. How happy were you for him?
Ecstatic. Corey himself would say that last year wasn't his best year, and he needed to start big this year, and it's gone very well. Both him and Ray Emery have played very well for the Blackhawks, and the team in general has been outstanding. But there's a couple nights where they were a little subpar. Emery had one game in Calgary where he was outstanding and ended up getting them 2 points out of it. So Corey's, I would say he'd be very, very happy with it. And the shutout is, from a goalie's perspective, it's nice to have. It doesn't often happen, but for it to go that long and for him to get one, I was really happy to see.
Yeah, he even said himself, he knew it was on his mind. Those last 5 minutes, he was nervous. So
for sure.
Good for him, obviously, and good for the Blackhawks organization. All these guys having a lot of success.
Yeah, and hopefully they continue the way they're going.
In large part to you.
I won't take the credit, especially for those guys up top. Steph Waite does a great job with them, but it's nice to be a part of the organization, nice to be a part to watch these young guys develop, and hopefully our guys here and our draft picks will someday wear that Blackhawks jersey, and I'll be real proud then for sure.
That's Andrew Allen, Blackhawks developmental goalie coach. Let's give it up for him.
Thank you.
All right, Allie, thanks for the time. We'll be back with more Bud Light Hog Talk coming up right here at District Bar and Grill. You're watching Bud Light Hog Talk on 23.2 Antenna TV.